27's such a strange age, and you can feel it in your being where there's like a transition into something new. There's maybe a fed upness or a new sense of I'm moving towards something else. Like what I was living for in my early 20s, my mid-20s, isn't serving me anymore. And as I get later on into my 20s and like climbing towards my 30s, maturity starts to kick in. Like I feel more responsible. I feel more of an adult. I feel more capable of like holding my own and being able to like manage things and make things happen. Whereas in my early 20s and my mid-20s, I was more scatty. I was more fragmented about it. It'd be like, I can do this and I can do that. And there was all this idealistic thinking of I could achieve everything. I could become a multimillionaire in a year. All this thinking of like, you don't know the limitations of life yet. And you still don't in your late 20s, but I'm learning it slowly. That life and responsibility teaches you where your limitations are and where your energy is better off spent. And there's a kind of settling down process that happens as you come into your late 20s. Well, this is obviously my experience of it. Everyone else is different. But it's kind of archetypal in the fact that there's this pattern of development that happens to people. And when they're in their late teens to early 20s, they're out exploring, they're partying, they're being reckless. Like things just don't matter. You can do what you want essentially. And like there's not really any consequences to it. And then as you get to your mid-20s, like, you've done enough of that. You've kind of like burnt the candle at both ends, and it starts to slowly dwindle away. But you still think that's the life that you want to live, or that's the way you want to pursue things. So you still dip your toe in and out of it. And then as time progresses and as you get older, you start to pull away from that. You start to pull away from the ideas of who you thought you were and who you wanted to be, and the social groups and the party scene and that kind of popularity mentality that came from school, and all that stuff kind of like pulls away from you, and you get a more advanced perspective on it, and you're like, wow, that's so much energy I just don't want to be spending time on. So much energy I just don't want to be giving into. And with that, as you get past that process and you're eventually out of it, you're left with this sense of ambiguity, this sense of I just don't know where to go. Like, I can't go out drinking and partying anymore because I just don't want to. It just doesn't serve me. I don't want to wake up feeling like rubbish. I don't like the people that I speak to when I'm there. I don't like the person I become. All the things you thought you wanted to do, like traveling and all this stuff, doesn't ring the same bell. Doesn't give you the same sort of vigor. And so you're left with, what do I do? Like, where do I go? And I've had that exact process, that exact progress that I've explained. I spent my late teens to early 20s partying, doing a lot of things I shouldn't be doing. Very reckless, irresponsible, not good with my money. And then as I got into my mid-20s, early to mid-20s, started traveling, exploring, meeting new people, pushing the boundaries of who I thought I was, learning what the world's like a little bit more. Learning parts of myself that I didn't know could survive out in different places and relating to different people. And then as I got back home, I realised I don't want to travel anymore. I kind of want to like settle down and have a bit of like normality, a bit of routine. I want to earn a bit of money. And then as you do that, you settle in and go, like, what's next? Because all the stuff that I wished for when I was younger, all the stuff I had ambition for, I had drive for, doesn't seem to motivate me anymore. It's not as fun. Things feel more destructive than they do pleasurable. And so that's slowing down, that tendency to not want to give into your gratification, to not want to go out there and be sporadic with your partying or sporadic with your socialising, to not as much attention seeking. When that slows down, where do you go? And for me, I've got a house now, I've got the relationship, etc., a family on the way, and it's like responsibility comes at you at some point. Responsibility hits you, and you've got to learn to manage that responsibility and lean into it. And that responsibility has been my greatest teacher. As much as it contradicts the ideas of who I thought I was going to be when I was younger, the ideas of me being this multi-millionaire, traveling around the world, being this like influence guru, like you see them all online. But my ideal projections were there. But life has taught me something completely different, and it slows me down a lot more. And that projection that I had, them ideals, a lot of the projections we have in youth, they come from real insecurities, real places of not knowing who we are. And I think as life happens to you, sorry guys, I've got a banging cough. As life happens to you and responsibility happens, you learn that who you thought you was going to be and who you thought you are not important, and they're not serving you. And the goal is to come to understand yourself, is to live your truth as essentially as you can. And that happens by slowing down and leaning into your life, learning to show up into your life more, to be where your feet are, to engage with the people around you, to engage in the responsibilities that you have, whether that be your job, whether that be managing your relationships, some external pursuit you have, really being there and slowing down and learn and understanding what that's teaching you, what is that revealing within you. And that process of slowing down, that process of becoming more aware, it happened to me as I've developed through my 20s. And I think it's the natural developmental growth of consciousness. If you look at spiral dynamics, where we come out of the seed of ego development, we're getting very formulated from our experiences, from our environment, from our parents, from our teachers, from our friends. All that's building us, and there's not necessarily a lot of choice within that. We're kind of unconscious in this process. It's kind of happening to us, and it's shaping something within us. It's making us who we are. And then you grow up into a culture, into a society that demands certain things of you, that values certain things of you, and you learn to project that into the future person who you want to be. And there's a certain part of you when you become 18 and you start earning your own wage, you become an adult. It's like, wow, it's time to start working towards that projected future version of me. And you go out and enjoy yourself. You try all these things, and you're trying to figure out what that is. But you're moving towards something. It's like you're progressing towards this sense of, I'm becoming someone who is of value, someone who is of importance. And once you've spent enough time doing that, and you realise that it never quite feels fulfilling, it never quite feels satisfying, then you end up dropping that. You end up letting it go. Little bit by little bit. It doesn't happen straight away. It can do in some people who have insightful experiences through deep contemplative practices or substances that allow you to have that sort of insight. But normally and ideally, consciously, that happens slowly and it happens naturally. And then you're left with a place of, once you stop chasing the ideals of youth and the projected version of who you think you should be, you're left in a place of like, where do I go next? What do I do? Who am I? If I'm not who I thought I was, if I'm not who I was through youth, if I don't have all these hopes and these desires that I once had when I was in my 20s, when I was in my early 20s, and I had all this youthful ambition, like, where do I go now? What do I aim towards? What do I head towards? And there's a certain amount of ambiguity within that. There's a sort of unknownness. There's a void where you just sit there and it's like, I have no clue. And what I've come to understand, or I'm coming to understand, is that who I thought I was and where all these like scatty ambitions that I had were all up in my mind. They were all places that were taken away from who I were. They were all dissociative tendencies. Sorry guys for the coughing, it's really bad. I'm trying not to cough straight in the microphone. They're very dissociative tendencies, and they were all like pulling me away from my experience of what I was feeling. And as life becomes more normal, I learn to settle into myself more and be where I am. I realise that my feet are where I am more, and I seem to fit into life more. I'm not as like pulled away questioning all the time. Questioning if, is this the right thing to do? Is that the right thing to do? I'm more happy at just bobbing along with it. And I think you need to be careful in a sense, because that bobbing along and fitting into it can become like a mild form of comfort. And it might not be like ultra fulfilling to you, but you might be like comfortable in the fact that, wow, I actually feel like myself. Like I don't feel anxious all the time or scared all the time as I did in my early 20s. I'm not questioning who I am and comparing myself to others as much. Like I do kind of feel more normal. I feel more happy to bring myself into the world. And that's such a nice feeling. It's so freeing. And I don't know if everyone gets there. I don't necessarily know if this is a normal developmental arc. I'm just kind of explaining what I believe and what I've experienced. But I've got to that point where like I turn up to my job and I'm like, I'm happy bringing myself to my job. I've got a house, I've got responsibilities. I'm happy bringing myself into that. I no longer have any social anxiety. I don't stress as much. I'm not worried as much. I feel more like self-assured when I sit there. I can feel my body more. I feel more like postured and straight, and I'm just more confident bringing myself into the world. But what I have noticed is that lack of drive and that lack of ambition really can inhibit you in ways of where you stop moving out into the world and trying different things. And I can see how people, as they progress with more responsibility, get stuck in ruts and they just kind of accept what life is. And then at that point, there is no achieving new things. There's no creating new situations or scenarios that are going to make you learn and are going to challenge you. There's more just There's more just an acceptance of, well, this is who I am. And you just bob and weave. And I think that's how people lose 10 to 20 years of their life, just doing something they're not majorly happy, but they're not majorly depressed. They're just like kind of numb. Not numb, but they're just there. And there's no striving. And I think it's good to strive, but striving can't be from them youthful ideals. It can't be neurotic. And I think to get to a point of healthy striving, you need to go through that process of letting go of youthful ideals. Whatever that dream is, that aspiration that you've had from when you was younger, that intuition of the person I'm going to be, is that essentially true? Is that who you are meant to be? Or is that coming from these very like youthful aspirations that are baked in insecurity, baked in anxiety, baked in like an escape of who you are? Because if you keep chasing that, you're never going to get there. It's never going to feel like you arrive. And I first think you need to go through a process of reeling that back in. That energy that's projected out there onto this goal and to that goal, you need to reel it back in into the unconscious and let that energy lighten up what's inside. A very Jungian idea in the fact that like we have this energy that we project out of there, and these ideals and these hopes, they're actually parts of our golden shadow, the part of us that is meant to be actualized, but it can't. We're not accepting it on the level of consciousness, and energy needs to go somewhere, so it gets projected out into the world, onto false ideals. But you can't serve these false ideals because they're not going to ever give you what you want, and so that's why the goal's always moving. It doesn't feel fulfilling. You can't ever seem to achieve it because it's not the right thing for you to be doing. And so you need to go through a process of reeling it back in. And then you sit in the dark, like kind of a dark night of the soul, in the terms of the way the Saint John on the cross said. It's like your old identity, the old person who you thought you was, no longer important. It's no longer you. It's no longer your path. And so where are you going to go now? What are you going to do? And I think in that time, learning to come into your body and just meeting the demands of life and slowing down is of importance because it grounds you. And can feel very destabilizing psychological experience, which is I have nothing to strive towards. I have nothing to aim towards. I don't know what I want to do. And you've just got to learn to wait, I think. You got to be proactive and active in the sense of keeping yourself maintained, attending to the things out into the world. But you've also got to learn to slow down and not be so scatty of chasing things and trying to pursue things. And I think I'm in that process right now. I think I'm there where I'm kind of like the youthful ideals I had and the youthful aspirations, they're not as important to me anymore, and I don't feel I don't feel the shame and the guilt that they were causing me that I wasn't achieving them. I had all these goals and all these aspirations, and they were so far ahead. They were so ambitious that like they became destabilizing, and there was something within me that knew I wasn't going to get there. I wasn't going to achieve that, because not because I couldn't, I didn't have the capability, because it wasn't right for me. But I would never admit that to myself, because I attached so much of my self-importance to the fact that I had to achieve these, to be seen, to be validated, to be loved, to be cared for. I put so much importance on that. And I think this process of, especially me going to therapy with a Jungian analysis and doing a lot of my contemplation, mindfulness practice, I've come to the fact that I don't need that future version of me to be loved and to be accepted. That's a state of being, that's a state of calmness that is within me, and it's accessible within my consciousness. And so that's fine. That's where I'm getting to. I'm learning to sit within myself and feel more comfortable. And it's shown me how adaptable I am to things, and how maladaptive I can be. And in a sense, that's freeing, because I feel like I'm more eager to deal with the day-to-day stuff. I can deal with that stuff, whilst also I don't feel as tied to or ashamed or locked into a path that I'm not taking. But also I do miss that sense of having something to aim for, even if it's a false ideal. There's that quote from the Bible. It's, idle hands are the devil's workshop. And I think even a false ideal at least keeps you busy. At least keeps you entertained. At least it keeps you moving in any direction. Doesn't matter what direction, at least you're moving. Whereas when you stop chasing them, you're left with, where do I go? Where do I strive? Where do I move towards? And I can't really answer the rest of... Sorry guys, this cough must be doing your head in. Can't be very pleasurable to listen to. And then you're left with a sense of what I'm in now, which is like, I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know what I'm going to do. And a sense of me still panics a little bit that I'm going to fall into normality. I'm going to fall into just like a normal member of society, as if there's something wrong with that. I don't know. But I feel like my life's just going to be normal. I'm just going to be stuck doing things I don't mind, but I necessarily aren't my like golden projection shadow. But also I feel equipped for when something comes up, I can chase it. I can achieve it. I think that's everything I've got to say, guys. First video in a while. Hope it was helpful. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you in the next video.